Every conversation you had today contained at least one lie. Not the obvious kind, the subtle manipulations, the cherry-picked facts, the half-truths designed to win rather than understand. Today, we're diving deep into intellectual dishonesty as the cultivator of doubt and fractured relationships, tracing its roots back to the ancient fall of Lucifer and exploring how this primordial pattern of deception continues to unravel trust in our modern world. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how to spot these deceptive tactics and why our capacity for self-deception might be humanity's most dangerous flaw. Let me bring in someone who's spent considerable time studying this intersection of ancient wisdom and modern psychology to help us unpack this.
You know, when we talk about intellectual dishonesty, we're really talking about something that goes way deeper than just lying. According to the research, it's the deliberate manipulation or misrepresentation of facts, ideas, or arguments to support a predetermined conclusion or to avoid challenging one's own beliefs.
So it's not just about being wrong, it's about being wrong on purpose?
Exactly. And here's what's fascinating. The page content describes it as the antithesis of intellectual integrity. It's like we're actively choosing deception over truth-seeking. Think about cherry-picking data. The research compares it to going to a buffet and only loading up on desserts.
That's such a perfect analogy. You might feel satisfied in the moment, but you're not getting the full nutritional picture.
Right, and then there are ad hominem attacks, what the research calls the playground bullies of the intellectual world. Instead of addressing the argument, you attack the person making it.
It's like saying you're wrong because you're stupid rather than explaining why the argument itself is flawed. But here's what I find really intriguing. This pattern of deception, this cultivation of doubt, it has ancient roots, doesn't it?
Absolutely. When we look at the theological framework, particularly around Lucifer's fall, we see what might be the original blueprint for intellectual dishonesty. According to the biblical analysis, Isaiah 14 lists 5 I will statements, the clearest profile of angelic self-exaltation.
5 I will statements? What were those about?
Well, the page content indicates that Lucifer aspired to ascend to the heavens and establish himself above God's throne. It was pure prideful ambition, the desire to be equal to or greater than God. And here's the key connection. This wasn't just rebellion. It was intellectual dishonesty at its core.
How so?
Because according to the theological perspective, Lucifer was originally described as the light bearer. He embodied beauty, wisdom, and position within the divine hierarchy. He knew the truth, but chose to manipulate it for his own ends.
So he had access to perfect knowledge, but deliberately distorted it. That's terrifying when you think about it.
And what's really striking is how this ancient pattern shows up in modern relationships. The Psychology Today research reveals that deception in intimate relationships isn't just about big lies. It includes making ambiguous statements, telling half-truths, and withholding information that affects the relationship.
Wait, so even withholding information counts as deception?
According to the research, yes, especially when it's information that someone has a right to know because it affects the relationship and deprives that person of freedom of choice and informed action. It's intellectual dishonesty applied to intimacy.
That's a much broader definition than most people would think. And the consequences?
The research shows they're devastating. Lies grow bigger the longer the truth is hidden, leading to greater consequences once revealed. And here's something really interesting. Ordinary guilt that could be reversed with honesty becomes shame when it involves a lie.
Shame versus guilt, that's a crucial distinction. Guilt is about what you did, shame is about who you are.
Exactly. And the Psychology Today research reveals something even more concerning. Beyond mental distress, lying actually leads to physical health complaints. The body keeps score of our deceptions.
So intellectual dishonesty isn't just morally corrosive, it's literally making us sick?
That's what the research indicates. And it creates this vicious cycle. The secret holder feels guilty during intimate moments, so they start avoiding closeness. They might even provoke arguments to create distance.
It's like the deception becomes a cancer that spreads through every aspect of the relationship. But this goes beyond just personal relationships, doesn't it? What about the workplace?
The workplace research is equally sobering. According to the Safe Zone analysis, intellectual dishonesty erodes trust among colleagues and undermines credibility. When people engage in dishonest behavior like lying, plagiarism, or misrepresenting information, others question their integrity.
And once that trust is broken, it's incredibly hard to rebuild.
Right. The research shows it hinders effective collaboration and teamwork. When individuals aren't honest about their knowledge, skills, or contributions, it leads to misunderstandings, conflicts, and breakdown in communication.
So it's not just about the individual being dishonest, it's about how that dishonesty ripples out and affects entire teams and organizations.
Absolutely. And here's where it gets really interesting. The research on academic dishonesty from Springer shows that students who perceive more corruption are more likely to engage in academic dishonesty, but only in more corrupt environments.
So corruption breeds more corruption? It's contagious?
That's exactly what the data suggests. The study looked at 535 university students in Mexico and the United States and found that peer behaviors and tolerance of academic dishonesty contribute to higher propensities to cheat in both countries.
It's like that old saying, bad company corrupts good character. Actually, isn't that from the Bible?
Yes. The page content actually quotes 1 Corinthians 15:33-34. Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good character. Sober up as you ought and stop sinning. It's fascinating how these ancient insights align with modern research.
So we've known about this pattern for thousands of years, but we're still falling into the same traps. What's going on psychologically here?
Well, the psychology research defines doubt as a feeling of uncertainty or lack of conviction concerning truth, reality, or reliability. But here's what's crucial. It's not just an absence of belief. It's an active process of questioning and evaluating.
So doubt can actually be constructive?
Exactly. The research shows it has a dual nature, both a potential impediment and a catalyst for growth. René Descartes actually used methodological doubt as a tool for finding truth, famously concluding, I think, therefore I am.
That's fascinating. So the same mechanism that can be weaponized for deception can also be used for discovering truth.
Right. But here's where intellectual dishonesty comes in. It's when we manipulate that doubt process. Instead of genuinely questioning to find truth, we're questioning to support predetermined conclusions.
It's like using a scalpel to heal versus using it to harm. Same tool, completely different intent and outcome.
And here's something really counterintuitive from the PNAS research. Very strict pro-social norms can actually have a perverse negative relationship with pro-social behavior.
Wait, what? Strict moral standards lead to more immoral behavior?
The study found that individuals who hold very strict norms, those who perceive a small lie to be as socially unacceptable as a large lie, are more likely to lie to the maximal extent possible.
That's wild. So if you're going to be punished the same for a small lie as a big lie, you might as well go big?
That's exactly the behavioral rationale the research identifies. If the perceived norm doesn't differentiate between severity, lying to the full extent maximizes financial gain while the perceived costs remain unchanged.
This is blowing my mind. So, overly rigid moral systems can actually create more dishonesty. It's like moral perfectionism backfiring.
And the research shows this generalizes to civic norms too. Tax evasion, cheating on government benefits, fare dodging on public transportation. Countries with larger fractions of people with very strict attitudes towards civic norms have higher society-level prevalence of rule violations.
So we're seeing this pattern everywhere, from ancient theological rebellion to modern workplace dynamics to entire societies. There's something fundamental about human nature here.
The biblical perspective would say it's because of humanity's fallen nature and the pervasive influence of sin. According to the page content, apart from transformative power, individuals and societies are prone to drift away from moral standards.
And that connects back to the Lucifer narrative, this idea that even perfect beings with perfect knowledge can choose deception over truth.
Right. The theological analysis shows that after Lucifer was cast down, he transformed from the revered angel of light to the embodiment of evil. And according to the research, post-fall Satan operates as God of this age, explaining every tyrant's hubris.
So there's this ongoing agency of deception that continues to influence human systems and relationships.
And what's really striking is how the research shows this plays out in intimate communication. The LinkedIn analysis reveals that deception functions simultaneously as a threat to relational trust and as a mechanism for relational maintenance.
So we lie to protect relationships, but lying ultimately destroys them. It's this tragic irony.
Exactly. The research shows that while deception can momentarily preserve harmony or protect self-esteem, it generates cognitive, emotional, and structural costs that undermine intimacy over time.
It's like taking a painkiller for a broken bone. You might feel better temporarily, but you're not actually healing the underlying problem.
And the research reveals something profound. Intimacy isn't built merely on openness, but on the continual negotiation between honesty, self-presentation, and relational security.
So it's not about perfect transparency, it's about navigating that tension thoughtfully and honestly.
Right. And the workplace research emphasizes that avoiding intellectual dishonesty requires self-awareness, personal integrity, and a commitment to ethical behavior. It's an active choice we have to make repeatedly.
So when you step back from all this research and these ancient patterns, what does it really come down to?
I think it comes down to recognizing that intellectual dishonesty isn't just about big lies or obvious deceptions. It's about those subtle manipulations, the cherry-picked facts, the half-truths we tell ourselves and others every day.
And understanding that this pattern, this cultivation of doubt through deception, has been fracturing relationships and communities since the beginning of recorded history.
But here's the hopeful part. The research shows we can recognize these patterns. We can choose intellectual integrity over intellectual dishonesty. We can use doubt constructively rather than destructively.
It's about being honest with ourselves first, then with others, and recognizing that the temporary comfort of deception always comes at the cost of long-term trust and intimacy.
Exactly. Whether we're talking about workplace dynamics, intimate relationships, or entire societies, the principle remains the same. Intellectual honesty builds trust, while intellectual dishonesty cultivates doubt and fractures connections.
And maybe that's the most profound insight here, that our capacity for truth-seeking or truth-distorting shapes not just our individual lives, but the entire fabric of human civilization.
That's beautifully put. The ancient wisdom and modern research are telling us the same thing. The choice between intellectual honesty and dishonesty is one of the most consequential decisions we make, often without even realizing it.
So the next time you feel tempted to cherry-pick facts, attack the person instead of the argument, or withhold important information, remember, you're not just making a small choice. You're either building trust or cultivating doubt. You're either connecting or fracturing. And in that moment, you're choosing which ancient pattern to follow. Thanks for joining us on Copilot Podcasts. The conversation you have after this episode, make it an honest one.